Hello and welcome to our fourth SolveTank, where we, a collection of SaaSOps professionals, get a SaaS vendor on to do us a demo. My name's Colin McCarthy, and here I am with all of my SaaS colleagues from North America, Europe, and hopefully further. And today we have Druva. We have Matt and Tim Murphy from Druva, who are a backup tool and will give us a demo. I'm going to pass it over to Tim to give some background on the company.
Hey, Colin, thank you so much. And again, thank you everybody for joining today and spending some time with us. We certainly appreciate the opportunity. I have been with Druva for 6 years now, which makes me like ancient in Druva terms. I think I'm employee number 62. We're up to 1,000. We have we've been in business for about 14, 15 years now. We came out with the product 12 to 13 years ago, and we've enjoyed a 10-year partnership with AWS. And as our friend Jeff Bezos likes to say, there is no compression algorithm for experience. You either have the 10 years of experience or you don't, and we're the only ones that do in the data protection space. So we are the #1 partner in AWS in 2018 and 2019, and hopefully 2020 as measured by their APN, their partner network. We have 5,000 customers around the globe, and we're protecting a half an exabyte of your data up in the cloud every single day. So, and we continue to grow 30 to 40% year over year. And we passed over $100 million in ARR last year. So we're one of those unicorns that everybody talks about. If anybody has any questions about Druva, I'll be happy to, answer them in the 20-minute conversation later. We do 4 major things. We back up and protect endpoints, laptops, cell phones, tablets. We back up and protect AWS workloads. So we protect and do a lot of orchestration of your AWS snapshots and workloads. We can do that. We back up and protect server workloads to the cloud, VMware, SQL Server databases, CIFS, NFS mounted machines, Oracle databases, and the like. And then finally, what Matt's going to talk about today is our SaaS protection product. We back up and protect data from G Suite, Office 365, Salesforce, Slack, which I guess is now Salesforce. So we back those up and protect them in the cloud. And as IT professionals, we know we never want to have our production data and our disaster recovery data in the same data centers. So why would I ever think Azure or Google can protect my Office 365 or G Suite data? Back that up, protect it someplace else. In our case, we do it in AWS, which is, we believe, the world's best infrastructure. And we have 3 copies of your data protected for you, 3 different data centers, self-healing data file system to do that for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Rubin for a demonstration on that last product we talked about. But if anybody has any questions on the other products, we'd be happy to answer those as well.
Okay, great. I think we'll go in and pass it over to Matt and see a demo of the platform.
All right, great. Well, thanks. Thank you, Tim. Thanks everybody for joining. I just lost it. I was going to show you a quick. Do it this way. So just to illustrate quickly what the platform looks like, since it is a SaaS-based platform and there really is not much to see, our solution is built natively in AWS. So we are using Lambda compute for the master server and data movers. We use DynamoDB for our dedupe databases. We use S3 to shard the data away from the metadata and store it securely in AWS.
Matt, are you sharing a screen? Because it hasn't.
That would help.
It's a technical glitch. We'll fix that in post-production. There we go.
Painting such a beautiful picture with words. All right, can you guys see a diagram on the?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So I'll take a step back for a second. So just quickly to illustrate what the platform looks like, because really as a SaaS-based solution, you just see the interface through which you control it. Druva is a SaaS-based application built natively on AWS. So we use Lambda Compute for our master server and data movers. We use DynamoDB for the dedupe database. We use S3 to shard the data away from the metadata and store it securely in AWS. So really the infrastructure is your data center or your cloud-based application, whether that's M365 or G Suite or Salesforce, and then a giant cloud off to the side representing the backup solution. So I've logged in here to the dashboard for the Nsync console, which is where we manage the user-based workloads from. So as Tim said, user-based workloads are laptops, tablets, and mobile devices, as well as the cloud applications. So the dashboard here is going to show you a summary so you can see at a glance the total number of users that are under management, total amount of data that's protected, and statistics for backups over the previous 24-hour period, whether that's, again, across the devices or the applications. Backup of the data in the case of the cloud applications is cloud to cloud. There is no infrastructure that needs to reside on site in your data center. As part of the configuration, we authenticate Druva into your tenant, granting us access to discover users and data in the environment. We can integrate with Active Directory through SCIM, through a local AD connector, or leveraging other third-party solutions such as BetterCloud in order to discover and provision users across the solutions. And once we have that in place, we can then go in and discover the mailbox, the Google Drive folders, and even the Google Drive shared drives, the shared folders that are created as well. You'll configure a profile that shows, that defines the backup frequency is pretty simple. We're going to back up anything we find for the user once or twice a day or once or twice a week, depending on the frequency that you choose. It's governed by the APIs that were created by the first parties. So in this case, Google or Microsoft dictates the parameters within which the backup can operate. And then you set a retention or how long you want to keep that data with Druva. Couple of advantages to adding a backup solution for that cloud apps data on top of moving the infrastructure is really just the fact that it's infrastructure. When you sign up with Google for G Suite or with Microsoft for M365, you're shifting the infrastructure and the data into their data centers, into their clouds, and their agreement is to make the service available, and they are only responsible for the infrastructure itself. The underlying data they state in their agreements is really your responsibility to ensure that it is protected and recoverable. So, there's rudimentary controls within either application to delete or to recover a file that's been deleted. Not very user-friendly. And even when you do have to call, it's not a pleasant experience, from what I understand, to get a technician on the phone and help you restore data that was deleted out of a mailbox or a shared drive folder. The other advantage here too is, depending on your retention requirements, which vary based on business practices, industries, etc., you may need to keep data for a period of time beyond when the user has separated from the company. And typically that means you're paying a full license cost for that user to remain active in the application, even though they are no longer active in your directory, they're no longer on your payroll. So with Druva, you can pay to store the data for that user or preserve it based on the retention policy without having to also pay the service to keep the data and the account online. So there's a benefit to being able to do that. So once we go through and we provision the users and we discover their mailboxes, their folders, backups kick in. You'll see here from the user view within the application, we see the users, the last time their backup completed, the total amount of data that we have backed up for them, the last backup status. The icon here represents legal hold. So one of the features of the solution is to be able to use the tool as an early case assessment tool. So if there's some legal matter where there's a subpoena or a discovery request, if you have a 90-day retention policy on your data, in many cases those matters are not resolved within 90 days, and you need to make sure that that data is available to be produced when requested. So by creating a legal hold and adding a custodian to that hold, you're effectively suspending deletion of the data just for those users. That allows you to keep the data in the system until such time as you need to produce it. And that works across the cloud applications and their devices. So if you're doing a laptop backup and a Gmail, G Drive, or M365 backup, you can present device data as well as application data for a complete picture across the users. From an administrative standpoint or an end user standpoint, I can come in to the user view. This dashboard shows a summary of what we're backing up for at the user level across all their data sources. So if they have devices and multiple applications, that'll be set here. And then the administrator can do a restore on behalf of the user. They'll choose the data source. They'll choose the point in time. They'll browse or search through the content to make their selection, and then choose to restore the data back to the source. The end user can optionally log in on their own, and I'm going to show you a different source here, just based on where data is. But this is the end user view now of what the administrator just did. I can make the same source selection, so cloud application versus laptop, point in time, and then I can browse or search for files and have that restored back to my device. So no calls to the help desk if you choose to leverage those features within the solution. If you were to use the device backup, which I know is not very cloud forward, but devices, you still use a device to access those cloud applications. Data does get stored on them. The laptop backup can be used to ensure that the data that the user has is secure. You can use the laptop tool as a in your workflow for replacing devices in a lifecycle scenario, or if a device does get lost or stolen. We can capture the persona of the user, so all the settings that make the user's device their device. And when that device gets replaced, all those settings can be reapplied as part of that migration or restore. And the new replacement device looks just like the original device. So much quicker turnover time, fewer calls to the help desk when users can't find settings or content or the ever important pictures of their kids that they had set as their desktop backgrounds. Governance features, as I said, the audit trail will show all the activity within the solution from both an end user and an administrative perspective. If we are using the device-based backup features, there's a data loss prevention component that includes a device geolocation and tracking, so you can view the location of the devices, initiate mark devices lost or stolen, initiate wipes or recoveries. More importantly is search. So I can come here to federated search. I can search across file data or email data based on the name of the file, the hash value of the file, file type, or other metadata. And one of the key benefits about being able to search for the hash value here is ties into one of the newer solutions that we've added. Is a ransomware recovery feature. So It's not so much a question anymore of if you get hit, but when you get hit by a ransomware event. We will not prevent that attack from happening, but once it has, we can help you to identify the source of the attack. So identify the offending file. We can find that file throughout the environment based on that SHA value, and then we can remove it from the source, meaning we can go out to the device, assuming that the device is operational, to remove it. More importantly, we can remove it out of the backup copies that were created, so that the other part of the solution is to help you recover the environment. If the attack happened Saturday morning, well, let's roll back to the most recent clean backup before that, which was Friday morning. Yes, you may have lost a little bit of the data that was created during the day on Friday, but you did not have to spend an extended amount of time dealing with hostile negotiators trying to unlock and decrypt data for a hefty sum, only to maybe end up still in the same spot. Let's just roll the environment back. And by removing the offending files off the source and out of the backup snapshots, you're ensuring that you're not going to reinfect yourself immediately after doing the recovery. Legal hold, just to illustrate, so you can create a case. Cases are identified by labels that you provide, whether it follows an actual legal case number, project reference, could follow the name of the custodian, although typically you'll add multiple custodians to a legal hold, so that may not always be the best identifier. By adding the custodian, you are suspending retention of that, or really the retention policy, so you're effectively suspending deletion of the data. Now I can come in and I can define what data. So here, for this particular custodian who has 4 data sources, a laptop, mobile device, and his cloud applications, all of this data is now effectively on hold, and I can make it available by selecting either the most recent backup, backups within a certain date range, or all data that we have available across one or more of these devices through an external legal tool, through an API integration, or through a download client, which for a legal team, this is powerful because I don't want the user to know that they're under investigation. I don't want to restore the data back to their device to collect it. So I'm going to download it or restore it to a secure location where my legal team can now come in and conduct their investigation, whether that be forensic or to feed that data into another tool for search in order to look for responsive information to whatever that matters. And then finally, the last part of the governance feature set is, we call it proactive compliance. So this is really geared towards PII, or personally identifiable information. We have patterns predefined around social security numbers or other international country identifiers, as well as credit card numbers, telephone numbers, basically recognizable patterns that you could use to reverse engineer a person's identity. But we also give you the ability to build your own templates. So if there's a pattern that you use that doesn't fit one of those norms, you can define the template and set up a policy to go in and search for data that search through your data for instances of one of those templates. So here I can identify files or emails in this case actually that were sent that contained social security numbers. Many times, right, you don't want this information being transmitted electronically. There's strict rules about where it can be stored and who can access it. So this could create a big headache for you if it was discovered that there was a violation. So we'll help you find those violations, and then again, similar to ransomware, give you the tools to resolve them by removing the files. And then we have the ability to report on activity within the environment from a general backup administrative perspective, to see all the statistics of activity in the environment, last backup size, last restores, when was the last backup run, what's the overall activity report in the environment, live view to show you all of the operations in the environment, nothing running right now, as well as notifications for events that may have occurred. So one of the alerts that we've developed as part of the ransomware feature set, and I'm sorry, not the easiest thing to demo on a short timeline, which is why I'm really talking through it rather than showing it. But typically when a ransomware event occurs, all the data on the device is touched by way of the encryption. So that would show up as an unusual data activity. Typically, a backup's going to run, and it's going to grab a handful of files that the user may have updated throughout the course of the day. If a backup runs and every file on that device is being re-backed up because it was encrypted, changing the structure of the file, well, that is an unusual data activity. We'll trigger an alert based on that. Those alerts can be fed into tools like a ServiceNow to generate for ticket and event management, or SIM tools, so that you can quickly triage the source of the event, and then again use our tools to help you recover and roll back from. So I'm not watching time, but I've tried to give a pretty quick but succinct overview on the solution. So if anybody has any questions, by all means, we can start to fire away. Nothing exciting to see in the profiles, but this is where you would define how the user interacts with the solution, what we're collecting on what frequency, with what retention, etc. And because we talk about having the ability to do shifting away from Nsync for a second, but to protect other workloads, such as things native in the data center, like your file shares, your hypervisors, your application servers, or AWS workloads, typically managed by different teams. There's different information that is more important to those groups. So rather than devices and users, for example, you want to see servers and storage. So there's different dashboards for the different workload sites.
All right, great. Thank you, Matt. I know we'll probably drop back into the platform. I am curious to hear from Chris, Daniel, Michael, Brian, Dominic, Bert, what your thoughts are. If you've had any questions going through this.
I've got one we can start with.
Yeah.
Users, I know you kind of talked early on and I might have missed it, but are those manually created? Do they come in through the directories? How do those kind of generate?
Got it. Yep. So there's a couple different ways we can do that. If you're still using legacy on-prem Active Directory, we can install a connector in the environment to talk to AD, discover users that way. If you're using Azure AD, we can leverage SCIM and to talk to Azure AD, and again, provision users into Druva, and then go find their associated application folders. And if you're not using either of those options, users would be created manually, but there's ways that we can automate that. And in the case of Essence, while they are a G Suite and M365 environment, G Suite or Google is the source of truth in their environment, but it wasn't possible at the time. Still don't think it is directly to leverage SCIM or AD with Google. So we built integration using Better Cloud and APIs that are available both through Druva and Google to go in and you feed the list of users, we'll find the user and use the API to provision them in Druva, and then go do that resource discovery and begin the backup. So it does not have to be a manual process, but there's more than one way to add the users in.
Yeah, and that highlights, why it's always good to choose a solution that has a very good and usable and documented API, because then you can tie it into everything else. And it was for our setup, it was great to work with both the Druva engineers and Better Cloud to get that custom integration. So it's just part of a seamless workflow for when new users get created and they get added, and then also when a user leaves as well, and we can set that account to being preserved. So works very well. Other thoughts and questions from people?
Yeah, I have one, and it's pretty simple, and I apologize if I missed this, but how often are you doing these backups, or is that something that you can change within the settings or for different workloads?
Yep. So that really depends on what the workload is. In the case of a laptop where we're putting an agent on a device, that backup can run as often as every 5 minutes. When we're talking about a cloud application such as M365 or G Suite, they have respectively created a set of APIs that allows a third party such as Druva to access the data in the tenant and collect it for the purposes of the backup. But in an effort to protect that system from being overloaded, they have instituted a set of guardrails in terms of API call thresholds that can be made in a given period of time. So at most today, you can back up data out of your cloud applications twice per day. And that occurs on a rolling schedule because of the fact that we may need to spread out calls, or we may get throttled based on hitting those API caps. So a rolling schedule ensures that the backup does complete over an extended period of time versus you force a job to start every day at the same time for a large group. The first jobs run successfully. The ones further in the process are now hitting API limits, but then they time out, they're back and fail, so their backup never actually runs. Better to have it on kind of this rolling schedule.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And then once the backup is done, you set the retention, right? You tell us how long you need to keep that data for. And you could do that separately for the device. And you'll see there's more detail that you can set for the schedule and retention on the device than there is for the cloud apps.
Kind of a follow-up to that one. Can you manually run it on a user that maybe you need to, like, you're gonna have a legal hold in a minute, but like between the time of the last backup and now, you need to actually run something before you tell them, like, before, that kind of.
Yep. So you would go to the source, not so much the user. So in this case, I would go to, let's say, Google Drive, find the user, and then say backup now. Right. And the reason that you would have to do it from the source rather than the user, even though the user may have multiple sources, you may only be interested in the one source.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on, I guess, the retention and e-discovery. Do you have any native capabilities to do searches within your tool, or do you have any integration with other e-discovery tools?
Sure. So the search within the tool here is limited to metadata, meaning you could search on, in the case of a file, the file name, as well as other properties like size and create or modify time. With email, you could search on the subject and the sender or recipient, as well as create or modify time. But we don't do keyword-based search today. So that's why I think I said earlier, if you think about this as an early case assessment tool, typically when you have to present data to a legal firm, they charge you by the gig rather than by the user or other metrics. So to give them all the data for all the users in your organization could be cost prohibitive. If you can winnow that down to data specific to users and possibly even specific to a date range, now you're giving them 10 gigs of data instead of hundreds. They feed that into their tool and do their keyword-based search or forensic investigation in that specialized tool set.
Right. So when you do a search from your tool and do an export, is the format in like a downloadable zip file?
Yes. Well, they come back in their native files. They're not they would not be bundled today and compressed in like a PST or a zip file. We are adding an option to export to PST. Today you would just get an EML file back.
EML file. Okay.
And in the context of the file data, it would be in its native format, downloaded to a target, and then from the target you could compress and bundle it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. On a related note, I guess with regards to compliance, do you have an option to select which regions or zones you like to put your data in? If you had like a data residency requirements?
Yes. So you can choose to use any of the 15 supported AWS regions that Druva utilizes.
Right.
And I can go. This loads. There we go. So here for Nsync, you'll see that we're using 2 locations for the US plus Canada, South America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Australia. We do not, nor does AWS, have data centers in mainland China for obvious reasons within China. But any of our customers in that region are using Hong Kong or Singapore.
Right.
So you would tell us as part of the onboarding process which storage region you want your data to reside in. And you can have multiple regions configured, so you can have groups of users going to localized regions based on those requirements. Or you could choose, and this is becoming popular with a lot of our customers, as an East Coast based company, and their cloud infrastructure may already be in the East Coast, they're going to choose to back up to the West Coast and then incorporate DR as part of their backup strategy.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from people? Bert, Dominic, any thoughts? Michael?
I've got another one if no one else does.
Yeah, sure, Chris.
Can you give your legal team access to this outside, like in just like if they want to do discoveries, but only have access to that?
Oh, yeah, privileged access. Well, that's always a good thing to have.
And one that I should have remembered on my own to share. So thanks for the reminder. So yes, there is roles-based access. There are different types of users that can be created, and they can be given different levels of access throughout different parts of the solution. So if we think about backup administrators for a moment and the concept of a profile, you could create multiple profiles. If there was a need to differentiate either how users are managed, what's backed up, or just from a roles-based access perspective, I can assign a user that can view backup statistics, start and stop a backup, but not make any changes to the configuration, not do any restores at the profile level. I can create a compliance admin that's your legal user. They are creating legal holds. They add and remove users to legal holds. They don't necessarily see any other aspects of the solution when they log in, so they won't see all the data sources. They won't browse and recover. And then I can create a legal admin and give that admin access to only specific legal holds. So, right, a lot of those matters are sensitive, and a lot of that information on a need-to-know basis. So I can, as a compliance admin, create multiple legal holds and then create an admin for each one and ensure that they only see that hold and the users associated with it and nothing else, just to protect that privacy. So yes, absolutely. You can create a brand new role and manually add in permissions. You can clone a role and use the components of a role as the basis for another role and add to it. So whatever level of access or granularity you want can be customized. the end user console can be branded. So if you want to see your company logo here rather than Acme, we could do that. And you can add in a custom help desk link or number so end users are not automatically calling Druva if they run into an issue. That can all be customized. I'm trying to think of what I may have glossed over here.
I know you said that it could do G Suite, Office 365, Salesforce, Slack.
Yep, ignore Box. Slack is available. Slack is a newer feature, and it requires, I believe, the enterprise edition of Slack. So it's under what we call our early adopter program. So if you tell me you're interested in Slack, I need to first validate that you have the right license and version. Then we would go have that enabled, and it would appear here as an option so that we can go in and start doing the collection of that data as well.
Right, yeah. You can always tell who's got Slack Enterprise from the tears that roll down their face every time they see their renewal invoice.
Yes.
For the ridiculous price that you have to pay for those enterprise features, domain capture and single sign-on and multiple workspaces and everything. So are there plans for other cloud applications? Obviously, Druva seems to be covering more platforms than some of the other solutions I've seen out there.
Yeah, we've talked about Dropbox, ServiceNow, other tools, but we're waiting for the end users to make a use case for us that is compelling. So the users really drive that development schedule, and right now they've told us to focus on Salesforce, G Suite, and Office 365.
Right.
Not necessarily in that order.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Three key applications for any SaaSOps professional to make sure if they're working in to have a backup solution. Because I know some people do think that Google Vault is a backup solution, but even the Google Help side says Google Vault is not a backup solution. And also with Google's recent change in deletion of data from your trash after 30 days.
Yep.
Your trash bin is no longer your backup. So yeah, it's certainly something very, very serious to consider. Thanks for the walkthrough, Matt, and asking questions. We've got one more question just before the bell goes from Dominic in the sauna there in Germany. You're muted.
Yeah, in our traditional Bavarian basement, basically.
I don't see any steins behind you.
Well, they're hidden. I have wide shoulders. No.
He has to look professional on these calls. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So whenever I hear AWS, I see the biggest downside of Amazon's solution as their non-existent commitment to being green or having good energy sourcing and all of those questions, which is as the biggest tool out there or infrastructure provider out there, super weird to me personally. Mm-hmm. And that's why I always ask those companies that utilize those infrastructures that are not committed to a fully carbon-free environment, what they're doing as a company specifically to address those issues, to compensate for the lag that AWS certainly brings in as the worst of the big three data centers.
That's a great question. I've never gotten that question in 6 years. That's a really good question. we are going to have to get back to you on that, as we have a program in the States. This crazy guy goes on TV and says, I'm going to have to do my homework and I'll get back to you with an answer. So I'm going to do my homework and get back to you on that one. I did want to call everybody's attention to the chat. I put my name and phone number and email address, Matt's name and phone number and email address. Feel free to reach out for us if you guys have any questions, or if you're interested in Druva, we will get you connected with the right people. I also put 3 links in. Druva.com is obviously our website. Docs.druva.com is publicly available. All of our documentation out there, we got nothing to hide. You can see everything. And then finally, Colin attended this session. This is DXP, which is our user conference. I don't know if you attended all the sessions, Colin, but I found a couple of them really good. And we had our keynote speech was given by the CIOs at Chipotle, Zoom Video, and Regeneron, 3 of the hottest companies in the US over the last 10 years, and certainly over the last year. And we also had the lead Gartner analyst for data protection in that talk as well. And then there was a lot of other content around Kubernetes and SaaS applications and so forth. So you might find that very interesting. We've also announced that we acquired SF Apex, Salesforce Apex, to do a lot more with our Salesforce.com products. So that content is all available for at least the next week or so on dxp.druva.com.
All right, great, thanks. There was one thing that hasn't been raised, and sometimes we ask this and other times we don't, and that's cost. Some SaaS-based providers are very open and publish their costs online. I'm not sure, I don't think the Druva ones, and obviously, as a disclaimer, we are a customer of Druva, and there was a negotiation. So I don't know what your standard sticker price is, or what you say to the question of what is the cost.
You know, your mileage will vary, right? So the list price of the solution, based on which features you choose to use, is anywhere between $4 and $10 a seat, but normally you wind up somewhere between $2 and $3.50.
Right, and that's per month per user.
Per month per user.
Okay, great. All right, let's. Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes before the top of the hour, and everybody vanishes to their next pending meeting. A quick run through of people's thoughts and impressions as a potential solution for any company they may work at or work at in the future. Obviously, any positive agreements it's not legally binding, and it's not a PO in waiting. So, Chris, let's start with you at the top of my screen.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting product for sure. I like the fact that it encompasses a few of the different SaaSOps that we use, rather than just like one for one service or another for another, and you know, beyond. I like that you didn't focus on the fact that, hey, maybe Google or Microsoft will lose your data, but actually focused on what somebody may need as a company, like the data that somebody may have deleted or whatever. And especially on the legal side where, hey, they need to go find things for multiple services. And I think that's a strong argument for it. So something definitely I'd be interested in.
Dan, next down on my screen.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of echoing what Chris said. I like that it's kind of all in one place. I really like the EDiscovery and the legal hold. I mean, that's really important, especially, you know, you like to think that it's not going to be important until it is important. So I really like that. And I really like that it's kind of all in one place. And you guys are a big thing that I enjoyed about it was being able to choose which one of those AWS data centers it points to, because it's something that comes up, and because, you know, dependent on your region, you might have to store it in a certain region. Or I liked your point about if they're on the East Coast, maybe makes sense for them to be pointing to a West Coast data center. So I really like that. I think it's a cool tool.
Great. Just like you don't know you need Restore until you need Restore, right?
Exactly.
Brian?
No, I agree with everything that's been said. Yeah, and I really like having this clean UI and like a single pane of glass. So I think this is a tool that we can consider for some of our customers.
Okay. Dominic?
Well, as long as the AWS question isn't answered.
I think it's brilliant that that as a socially conscious European in the Solve team that you're thinking about that, because that is something to consider, especially if an organization is trying to be a green organization. Then any services that they should be using should also be green as well, and that gets very difficult when you're reliant on so many of the of other parts in an application or your own operation.
Yeah, so yeah, for us it's super important, and the software supply chain is by far the not the easiest to understand. And whenever someone is super open about that they're using AWS, we're digging in, and if you're not open about using them or why you use them or what you do to address those issues as the service provider using that infrastructure, we're super thoughtful, and because in the backup space there is so much variety of people that don't use AWS, we just have to have some additional assurance on that carbon question in a sense. And so I publish a LinkedIn post probably on Tuesday, and if you can get me an answer by then, it's going to be included in that post.
So pressure's on.
Yeah.
Michael or Bert, any thoughts?
I'll go. Yeah, I think it's really nice. I echo what everyone else said. I like the apps that you're expanding to. I think those make a lot of sense. One thing you showed that I thought was really nice was the search capabilities across email and files and things like that. That seems like it would be a really nice feature, a handy one to have. So yeah, I think not too much more to add. But if I were starting a company today, yeah, I think I would definitely look at this as a tool.
And Bert, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have tons of thoughts. Time is running short here, but I do like the idea of having, cloud infrastructure, AWS, as well as your SaaS tools all backed up, endpoints in the same spot. Huge props to having single sign-on available and not a paid extra feature. That seems to be a common thing that we go back and forth with companies on. Why pay more to secure your product? So appreciate that as well. Yeah. There's a lot to be said for having everybody likes to have a single pane of glass. You know where your backups are happening for any of your SaaS-based applications or your infrastructure as well. And as a disclaimer, I should have said at the start, we are a customer, have been using Druva for a while. It has been an incredibly responsive UI platform to work with as well. It's very easy to navigate and get stuff done. So there are other platforms out there that can be more time consuming to operate in. And that's another key feature. Well, I want to thank Matt and Tim for your time today to show us Druva and Beyond SolveTank. I think this is where the credits would play, and you would walk out through those big wooden doors and do a little bit to the camera. So thank you very much. There's a few round of applause, and I will stop the recording.